morning. Welcome to Yellow Door Urban Homestead. I am Asia and I'm an urban gardener growing in a small space in my backyard. Today we're gonna see just how well the winter garden weathered the Arctic freeze. But first, we have to go and check on the chickens. So I went to grab some coffee. But let's talk about how cold it got. In my area, zone 7B in Virginia, I think our lowest temperature was 9. But with the wind chill, because we had so much wind, we were more like -3. As you can see, the chickens did just fine. The quail are also still alive outside. I gave them extra food. I gave them scratch grain at night. I gave them black soldier fly lava treats. Let's also remember, if you've been here for a while, that I am trying to see what I have to cover and what I don't have to cover. Also, there are beds that I don't have an option to cover, and they all have the ability to be covered. It's me not wanting to do the extra work to cover them. All right, I figured I'd mention that. Let's go ahead and look around, y'all. But first, let's drink some coffee. Tell me in the comments how your garden did as we walk through and look at my garden. So right now, it is still below freezing outside. It is Tuesday morning. Our Arctic freeze was last week. I think it was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Very windy, very cold. All right, so we're gonna start here at the bed that had the cauliflower, the kale, the collards, and more cauliflower. I am happy to say that although these leaves are very much damaged, the cauliflower, I'm gonna take this off because I'm probably gonna take this cauliflower today, is still in here and it's still alive. It is a little brown. So I am gonna go ahead and take that today and see what I can do with it. This cauliflower here was not very big, so I doubt there's anything going on in here really. That, yeah, well, it's still there and it's actually still very white. So I'm going to cover that one back up and I'm gonna leave it. Like I said, everything's still kind of frozen, but everything definitely got damaged by the cold. These are my collards, which they're still alive. Like, I'm gonna leave them because these leaves, the smaller one, they still have their texture to them. So I'll probably cut these leaves. I'm gonna see what they look like this evening. I'm going to water these. Once the water hose thaws out and I can turn the water on, I'm gonna water this to see what happens with the collards because they don't look horrible. So they may be fine and may come back. The kale, once it warms up out here, the kale jumps right back. So I don't think that anything is like wrong with these. The leaves start to plump back up. They start to stand back up. And so I think the kale is gonna be just fine to stay. So I do believe the collards and the kale can be an option that does not need to be covered. Cauliflower, I do think that needs to be covered. The red Russian kale, some of these leaves definitely got some damage, but the leaves in the middle are looking good, so I'm gonna leave those. Let's take a look at these cauliflower. There was only a small one in here too, but still looks white. I'm gonna leave that one and let it continue to grow. Let's take a look at this one. That's a little brown, and that's a small one as well. These were the Brussels sprouts, and so for sure, I'm gonna start pulling the leaves off now because the Brussels sprout leaves got damaged horribly. That purple is from it being way too cold, so just pull off the lower leaves. And we still have the Brussels sprouts. They're still frozen, so I can't really tell if they're damaged or not, but they're also very small. The leaves at the top of the Brussels sprouts are looking fine, so I feel like we could probably leave those as well. Even if they're damaged at this point, they're very small, so wouldn't be much I could do with them other than kind of give them to the chickens. Let's take a look at the bed in the middle. The Swiss chard did horribly. However, they have leaves in the middle that still have its texture. So these just, oh my goodness, they could not take a temperature that low. So I know I do need to cover those. This kohlrabi at the end it was already behind the curb because it got shaded for most of the year. But its leaves are damaged as well. You can kind of translucent, you can see that because it just couldn't take the cold. The cilantro looks pretty good. Once it warms up, this will start to look better. So I do know that cilantro can withstand some pretty cold temperatures. These collards here are looking okay in the middle. So I'll probably pull the larger leaves from them and leave them here. The collards here also damaged, but the middle leaves look okay, I will say. We'll look at those later on today when it's above freezing. The dinosaur kale looks fine too, and the texture is still there. So we'll be leaving those. The artichokes, they're gonna die. They're absolutely gonna die. They are white in the middle, and artichokes do have a whitish color to them. I do not think they're supposed to be that white. The thing with artichokes though is that their roots can survive, and then they may come back in the spring. So the most I may do to those is cut them down like at the base and then see if they come back in spring. Okay, the next bed is gonna be the one that had the rutabaga, cabbage, broccoli rabe, and Brussels sprouts in the back. So the rutabaga leaves look pretty bad. They really do. But the rutabaga themselves look fine. And my soil is frozen. So even if I wanted to pull those right now, I cannot because the soil is absolutely frozen. This is one thing I did not deal with last year when I mulched with straw and covered my beds. But we're gonna talk about how you can avoid what's going on in my garden, in your garden, and how I will avoid it next year. So you have the snapdragons right here. The snapdragons are gonna be fine. Like, their leaves are fine. It's just the flowers that died back. But they'll be fine and they will grow again. The cabbage, oh my goodness. It just looks so sad, y'all. It's just laying here. But I will say the texture is fine. I don't know if you can hear that. So there's still texture in these leaves. They are not mush. So I'm gonna leave those to see what happens this evening. Broccoli, and this is all over, did just fine. Like the actual broccoli head, it did fine. The broccoli rabe did not do well. They will have to be covered. Like this, they may have did the worst of the whole garden. Good thing is I had harvested a lot of this long before this cold snap came through. This broccoli here, it was the one that was being shaded, but it survived and the leaves still have texture. The smaller leaves seem to do way better than the bigger leaves. That's a broccoli leaf right there too. The Brussels sprouts in the back of this bed did not do well. They are looking just like the Brussels sprouts on the other side. Very damaged leaves. So we'll see what happens with them. They had a good amount of Brussels sprouts growing on them though. But I'm gonna come out here and pull all of these leaves. So we are supposed to be like in the 50s and the 60s this week, which is why I'm not gonna pull everything. I'm gonna see if it bounces back once it warms back up. I am gonna pull the broccoli rabe. I don't see that that's gonna do anything else after this. Like I said, there's broccoli over here and it looks fine. The leaves don't look fine, but the broccoli head looks fine. The Brussels sprouts in the back of this bed also looking pretty trash. And I know they say Brussels sprouts are like really hardy to the cold and the frost, and they probably are. I maybe needed to get mine out a little bit earlier this year, but this is the most success that I've ever had with Brussels sprouts, so I'm not complaining. But see, There's Brussels sprouts growing. Broccoli up here has a bunch of side shoots, but this side shoot did get damaged. You can see the brown on it. This little cabbage here still has some texture to the leaves, but this looks like it got damaged. Like if you look at the color of the leaves, they look a little bit see-through. I don't think that one's gonna make it. This is the calendula. It's very much wilted and damaged. I'm gonna cut it down to the ground because from last year, I'm pretty sure it'll come back. Turnips. These were all very small because we had pulled the bigger ones. But if you look, the middle leaves, the newer leaves look good. So I'm gonna probably cut off the larger leaves and see what they do. Carrot leaves, looking pretty bad, looking really sad, honestly. This bag is frozen, the soil is frozen. So I will probably take this bag in the house and this one, let it thaw out and harvest the carrots. Although I've heard that you can leave carrots in the ground and they may start to sprout again in the spring when it gets warmer. But I'm probably just gonna pull them to see what I got. Swiss chard over here. Middle leaf looking okay, but it doesn't really feel okay. So I don't know, we'll see about that. That's another Swiss chard. And this is a calendula. All look very frost damaged. Here are collards. Middle leaves look okay. And then you have kale back here where it looks just fine, honestly. They were already small, so they look okay. Now, the bigger leaves on these don't look that good. As opposed to the ones in the other bed. The middle ones look fine, though. Over here, the broccoli is looking good still, so we're gonna leave that. That's the little one that broke, keeping you updated on that. Still has its head. Over here, you can see a little bit of damage on this broccoli head. So that's what the broccoli is looking like. Yeah, like you see that, there's damage on that broccoli head. The kohlrabi over here is good and frozen. So we'll see what it looks like once it warms up out here, because it is definitely frozen and the leaves are laying on the ground. The onions in the bed that was already struggling look even more struggly. Some of them are even missing at this point. But I'm gonna leave them because they may sprout in spring. Onions on the side. This one is out of the ground. Don't know what happened there. I don't know, might have had a cat back here. But they're still here too. We'll see what happens with that. I'm not gonna pull any of the root vegetables that can overwinter because they may come back. Here's the garlic. And the garlic to me still looks pretty good. Garlic is made to overwinter, like it can overwinter. So nothing looks like overly droopy or anything like that. So I'm gonna leave those. The strawberries look fine. Then you have these two cabbages over here. We're gonna see what happens once it warms up. And the two kohlrabi over there that were left are frozen and their leaves are droopy. Blueberry bushes look just fine. They were gonna lose their leaves anyway. And then I'll come through and I'll have to prune them. I have to look that up too, how to prune them. And these are the strawberries I was telling you about that's in the pot. No mulching, no anything. Yeah, they are red as all get out everywhere. Still trying to throw runners out though, which is interesting. But yeah, those will come back. That's another pot. Doesn't look as red. There's one with a little bit of red in it too. And here's the other one with a bunch of weeds and red. Frozen solid. Over in the orchard area, there's the strawberry down here that looks just fine. This is the lavender. The rose bushes are starting to go dormant. I'm gonna come in and prune them. Raspberry bush, I'm gonna cut that right down to the ground. Raspberries grow from the new cane, so I'm gonna cut that to the ground, even though I need to move it. The oregano is looking fine. The sage is looking fine. Parsley, same thing, looking fine. Same thing over here with the thyme. Rosemary as well. Here's my one I grew from seed. So we are above freezing. We're actually at 42 degrees now. I am going to come out here and water. still frozen. Look at that. They had stopped laying for quite some time. So I'm back out in the garden today. It's been 24 hours since I watered, and things have thawed out. Things look a little bit worse than they did when we spoke yesterday. So right now, I'm pulling the leaves off of the Brussels sprout. And so I'm just pulling them. I've given some to the chickens. The rest, I'm just gonna let them compost in place, because the compost pile, it is not frozen, but I don't want to mess with it to maybe cool it down. So I don't want to dig down to put anything in it. So I'm just gonna let them compost in place. The Brussels sprouts are not mushy, so I'm gonna leave them to see if they will grow anymore. Also, the top leaves of the Brussels sprouts, they're fine. So I'm just gonna leave them. It's the lower leaves that were more damaged than the top leaves. My broccoli was not okay. I'm gonna harvest it and I'm gonna take it inside, and we're gonna eat it, but well, I'm gonna cook it. I'm not gonna say we're gonna eat it because I don't know what it's gonna taste like. It is not burnt like the cauliflower. I'm gonna show you that too. I've learned this year that I do have to cover my garden if it gets too cold, and I am pretty sure I need to mulch it. And so what I'm thinking is that when it's cold, like it's not warm anymore, I shouldn't maybe be fighting slugs as much as I do in the late summer, early fall. Then I will maybe mulch my garden. I'm gonna go ahead and cut out the broccoli rabe because that just didn't do well. It is mush. It's literally mush. And so the broccoli head that I thought did fine, when it was still frozen, you couldn't see this. Sure, you can see all of the brown on that now, but it's not mushy. So I'm gonna take it in the house and see what I can do with it. So the rutabaga, I'm gonna leave the rutabaga. Some of the leaves are pretty awful, but the rutabaga themselves, like I said, is fine. So I'm gonna cut off some of the leaves. So what could I have done to avoid this? In 9-degree weather, I'm not sure I could have done anything to avoid this. 9-degree that really felt like -3°, I'm not sure. But I do know that I have grown my food all the way through winter. Spring hit and I had to pull it because it was still growing. So what I will do next year is mulch. I mulched last year, I mulched in 2020. I did not mulch this year because I was not having slug and snail problems. So I was like, oh, I'm not gonna mulch. And in late summer, great idea. Maybe early fall for my season, great idea. In winter, you know, like when it's getting cold, late fall, early winter, I should mulch. I do believe that. So next year I will be mulching with leaves or straw. Also, I do need to cover. So once it gets cold, like under 20 some degrees, I probably need to cover. I cover with plastic. I put hoops up and I cover with plastic. I did a video on that. I'll link it below in case you are interested. Also, you could use frost blanket. I purchased my frost blanket from Lowe's. They were probably, I want to say like $5 or $6, if that much. So I could have thrown frost blanket out. I don't know though that in weather that cold any of this would have survived, because even when I cover, I still get frost on it, and I'm guessing it's not as frosty or as frozen. But anywho, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I know it's a longer video, but there was a lot to do and it spanned over a 2-day period. So if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Don't forget to visit me over on Instagram, where I post about the things going on in the garden almost every day. Don't forget to leave me a comment. I like comments. All right, bye y'all.